What's going on, guys? It is Pride33 here, and today I've got another Solar Warlock build for you guys, and to be honest, I can't believe this build isn't meta, or at least the exotics that I'm going to be talking about right now, and I can't believe that you don't see these used more often in in-game content. I mean, the amount of ability spam and buffs that you can dish out to you and your allies is insane with this build, and I can't believe I don't see it more often. This build is incredible, and not only that, but it's about to get a major buff next season because one of the exotics is the hand cannon. So, to all of the veterans out there, you might already have an idea of what I'm talking about. This is the Lumina and Boots of Assembler build. Now, with Solar 3.0, this kind of got some changes, and I used to use the Lumina Boots of Assembler before Solar 3.0, and I kind of fell off. And revisiting it after, I love it. It's so good. And it still feels great. Even though hand cannons aren't in a great spot right now in the PvE meta, it still feels great. But I think next season, whew, you should watch out for this build. Anyway, guys, so for the blueberries out there who don't really know what these two exotics do, let me quickly explain. So the Lumina, basically you get kills with it, it drops remnants. You pick up the remnants, it acts like subsistence, it partially reloads your magazine, and it also gives you a Noble Seeker, which is nice. That Noble Seeker can be shot out from your hipfire shot, and it will seek out allies, healing them and giving both you and the ally a massive 35% damage bonus, which is one of the highest damage bonuses you can get in the game, and I believe it's also higher than the Well of Radiance. Which is actually, like, insane that an exotic weapon can do that. Anyway, so something quite interesting that I also noticed about this weapon, and they don't talk about this anywhere, but the Noble Seeker can actually damage enemies, which I think is kind of interesting. So, not only can it damage them, but it can also go straight through them, allowing you to damage multiple targets with a single shot, which I think is interesting. Not that it's something that makes the exotic unbelievably powerful, but it's still an interesting feature. So, you know, if you got a group of thrall running at you, you can kill all of them with one or two shots instead of having to waste your regular shots. And something else, I don't think this is an intended feature, but I noticed that the shot from the Lumina, the Noble Round, it actually does about 3% more damage than the regular shot. Now, my math could be off, but it is definitely a small number like that from the basic math that I did when testing this. And I think that's kind of interesting. It's not game-breaking. It doesn't change how the exotic functions in any way, and I don't see a reason to shoot Noble Seekers at enemies because of a 3% damage buff. But still, I found this kind of interesting. Anyway, now moving on from there, we've got the Boots of Assembler. Now, again, to quickly sum this up for the blueberries, it basically directly buffs the airborne effectiveness of the Lumina and only the Lumina. Standing in rifts will send out Seekers to allies. Healing rifts send out healing seekers. Empowering rifts send out empowering seekers. When a seeker hits an ally, it's going to extend the duration of your rift. Now, an interaction that these two exotics have that is not read in any of the descriptions of any of them is that standing in a rift with the Lumina and Boots of Assemblers equipped will gradually reload noble rounds into your Lumina, which also kind of partially reload your magazine. So standing in the rift, you get your magazine reloaded, and you get Noble Seekers to buff allies. Another interesting thing, which this doesn't mention, is that it also does the same thing in your Well of Radiance. So standing in your Well of Radiance, you're also going to send out those same Noble Seekers, and you'll also have your Lumina gradually refilled, which is just going to help you send out those 35% damage bonuses, which is even more powerful than your Well, so why not do it anyway? Anyway, those two exotics by themselves are very powerful, but using the Solar Warlock, we can actually take this even further by playing to the strengths of the build, because the Solar Warlock perfectly plays to the strengths of this build. Now, obviously, we're using Well of Radiance because it's the best support super in the game, at least in my opinion. Not only that, it also gives you an insane healing factor, and because of the way that I've created this build, we're going to be able to use this super on similar speeds to if you were using, you know, the Phoenix Protocol or the Mantle of Battle Harmony. That's seriously how fast you can get your super back if you use the build that I've created. Now, Healing Rift. This is going to be our primary station. This is going to be our primary source of healing for ourselves. We are the combat medic. Our job is to find a spot of cover, place down our Healing Rift, and stand there. We heal the team. And by healing the team, you get to spam your abilities, and you get to keep yourself and your allies alive for long periods of time. Now, to kind of compensate for the fact that we're using mostly healing for this build, we need a source of burst damage, right? That's still going to allow us to be effective in combat. And so what we're going to use is an incinerator snap to deal damage to adds and create ignitions on single targets, and a fusion grenade to deal outputs of high damage. And since we're going to be spamming these two, this is going to give us the ability to spam burst damage on top of the 35% damage increase that we can give to our team and the constant healing. This is just, it kind of helps instead of going with a healing grenade or something like Celestial Flame, because while it does have a long range, it is not quite as good as the Incinerator Snap in terms of doing ignitions. Same thing with the healing grenade. If we put on the healing grenade, yes, we can heal a little bit better, but now we lose out on lots of damage, which in in-game content is going to be a real detriment. Plus, we can compensate for that healing later in the build. Now, Touch of Flame. This is going to obviously increase the damage of our fusion grenade, and that's all I have to say about it. It increases our damage, making us more effective. Heat Rises. Now, this one, normally I will say that Heat Rises is only recommended. However, in this build, I would say it is a requirement because of what it adds to the build. First of all, it gives you airborne effectiveness, kind of useful, pairs with Boots of Assembler for the Lumina. And on top of that, all right, it's going to give us melee energy, which is going to help with our ability spam. But most importantly, what it's going to give us is the ability to consume our fusion grenade to a cure effect, which is going to give it to us and nearby allies. This is what's going to compensate for not having a healing grenade. So if we ever need burst healing, boom, we've got our fusion grenade, right? And that right there is what's going to help compensate for that. Now, to talk about fragments, there is one fragment that if you do not equip any of the other fragments that I've used, if you use a Solar Warlock and you use Lumina and Boots of Assembler and you do not use this fragment, you are not using this build correctly, okay? And the fragment I'm talking about is none other than Ember of Benevolence. Basically, if you don't know what this does, anytime you buff an ally, whether it's a healing or an empowering buff or a radiance, whatever it is anytime you buff an ally, it's going to drastically decrease your ability cooldowns. This is what's going to allow us to spam our Incinerator Snaps and Fusion Grenades and our Rifts, okay? It's Ember of Benevolence, because when we place down our Rift, those Seekers go out, when we shoot off the Noble Rounds from our Lumina, when we consume our Grenade, anytime an ally just runs through our Rift, anytime an ally stands in our Well of Radiance, our cooldowns for all of our abilities drastically drop, okay? And the amount that it does, I would honestly argue, is on a similar level to the Verity's Brow, okay, for your grenades. That's how fast you can get your grenades back. Now, not quite the same strength. Verity's Brow, you can get your grenades back a little bit faster, but it is still fast enough that you can spam it. And it doesn't just affect your grenades, it affects all of your abilities. So if you take nothing out of this build, right, except that the Lumina pairs with Ember of Benevolence, that is all you need, okay? Anyway, moving on from there, guys. The next fragment that I would recommend is Ember of Searing. What this is going to do is it's going to give you the ability to get fire sprites and melee energy from killing scorched targets. So anytime you kill an enemy with your fusion grenade or your incinerator snap, which we're going to be spamming, we're going to be getting melee energy back and grenade energy, which is just good for the ability spam that I'm trying to create here, right? Next, we're going to increase our survivability with Ember of Mercy. This is going to give us an ally's restoration anytime we revive them, which procs Ember of Benevolence. On top of that, it's also going to give us restoration anytime we pick up a fire sprite, all right? And this is going to really help our survivability. Again, compensating for the fact that we don't have a healing grenade in our healer build, right? Now we're going to increase our survivability yet again with Ember of Resolve. This is going to give us a cure effect anytime we kill an enemy with a grenade. So again, compensating for that. We don't have a healing grenade, but we're still going to deal pretty decent amounts of damage because of our fusion grenades, our damage buffs, and our incinerator snaps. Okay, so we've got the ability spam out of the way. How are we going to spam our super? Okay, super easy with just a couple of mods. Most importantly, the mods that you put on your helmet. All right, the mods that you're going to want are going to be Ashes to Assets, Hands-On, and Dynamo. Ashes to Assets and Hands-On are basically going to give you super energy anytime you kill an enemy with your Incinerator Snap, or your Fusion Grenade, and Dynamo is going to give you super energy anytime you use your class ability near an enemy. Okay, and because we're going to be spamming these abilities constantly, we're constantly going to be spamming extra super energy, which this is what allows us to be so effective, right? Now, to move on to the next month, starting on the gauntlets, I like Heavy-Handed and Focusing Strike. Heavy-Handed is going to give us an Orb of Power when we kill an enemy with a powered melee attack, which is going to help us get that little bit of super energy, but it's also going to give us the ability to generate our own orbs, so that way we can generate our own charges for our Charge with Light mods. And then Focusing Strike just gives you class ability energy when you use your melee attack. So that's why I like those. Next, on the chest piece, we're going to want to put on Emergency Reinforcement. Emergency Reinforcement is going to give us 10% damage resistance when we're critically wounded, and this is going to be kind of really helpful, especially if we're stationed in our Healing Rift. Anytime we get critically wounded in our Healing Rift, we're now 10% harder to kill, which makes it allows us to survive longer. On your boots, you're going to want Recuperation to get a cure effect every time you pick up an Orb of Power, Absolution, and Orbs of Restoration. That way you can get extra ability energy every time you pick up an Orb of Power. And lastly, on our class item, what you want to do is Reaper. That way every time you use your class ability, your next kill is going to generate an Orb of Power. Again, this helps us get more super energy. You're going to want Distribution. That way you can refresh the cooldowns of all of your abilities. Again, more ability spam. And lastly, I don't really have anything else to put here. I like Powerful Attraction just because it helps me collect those orbs without having to run out. But anyway, guys, this build is insane. And to show you a little bit of what this build is actually capable of, I'm running it in the background now. And the amount of ability spam and the amount of survivability that this build offers. I mean, literally, what you do is you place down your Rift in any combat situation. You come into combat, you place down your Rift, you get these Healing Seekers that go out to your allies, giving you ability cooldown. You spam your grenades and your Incinerator Snaps. Okay, now, your Rift is back. You spam your Rift again because there's enemies nearby, and that's going to give you super energy. The kills that you got from your Incinerator Snaps and your grenades are going to give you even more ability, or super energy, right? And because you're still standing in your Healing Rift, you now have Noble Seekers. Shoot those out at your allies, get a 35% damage bonus, you get your Grenade and Incinerator Snap back. You kill a couple more adds, now you're at 50% super energy. You spam down your Rift again, now you're at more than 50% super energy. You still have a 35% damage bonus, you shoot at the boss a couple of times, or whatever big enemy you need to kill. Oh, look at that, you've got more Noble Seekers, time to spam it at allies. You got your Grenade and Incinerator Snap back. Boom, now you can put down your super. Now, it doesn't work that fast in every scenario, of course, just simply because of it needs the right conditions to do that. But seriously, you can spam your abilities like this. There have been situations where I can place down my my well and have my super back before the well is done. Now, that takes very specific circumstances because you need high density adds and your allies need to not be paying attention to the adds. But because of the amount of ability and super energy that we can generate from this build, we can seriously spam our stuff. There is almost never going to be a time you do not have a way to heal yourself, whether it be from your grenade, whether it be from your super, whether it be from a fire sprite you can generate from your Incinerator Snap, whether it be from your Healing Rift. Whatever it is, there's never going to be a time you don't have access to a healing source. And there's never going to be a time you don't have access to one of the best damage bonuses in the game at 35%. It is massive. Seriously, I know I said this at the beginning. I can't believe this build isn't meta. I mean, this build is honestly incredible. I love it. And if you're a support build, if you're a support character, and you don't use this build, what are you doing? Right? I mean, let's take a look at the Divinity and the Tractor Cannon. Okay, they give damage reduction values. Okay, this gives damage bonus values. Pair this with any Divinity, any Tractor Cannon build, and now you do exponentially more damage than you would have before. Because, it does more damage than the Well of Radiance, and you don't have to have your super active to get it. You don't. And that's what's the best part about this build. Now, again, it is a healing build. It does require you to have allies, and while this build functions pretty decently without any allies. I wouldn't recommend using this build solo unless you absolutely just love this build for some reason. But at any time you are going in any in-game content, you're running a warlock, this is the build you should run. Okay, I mean, I'm serious. If you are a warlock, this is the build you should run. You will be able to spam your grenades, allowing you to deal high amounts of damage, just like you would in a Varys Brow build. You're going to be able to spam your melee attacks, allowing you to clear lots of ads. You're going to be able to spam your healing rip. You're going to be able to spam damage bonuses. You're going to be able to keep your team alive and keep them with constant damage. Everyone's going to love you. You can suck at the game completely, and this build will help you be liked at least a little bit better by your fire team. It does take a little bit of skill to kind of spam everything, I guess, in the right order, but it's so easy to pick up and use, and the weapon itself feels crisp, it feels nice. I have nothing really else to say about this video, or this build. Anyway, guys, I hope you found something useful. I hope you enjoyed the video, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you made it this far. If you did make it this far, I would be interested to know. A lot of people checked off my last video, which is understandable. It was an Edge of Intent video. And real quick, I just wanted to say, in my last video, I didn't think that build was viable in in-game content. I just thought it was a fun build, and I did say that I take it in Grandmaster Nightfalls, and I've soloed a dungeon with it, but I did that as a challenge to myself. I wasn't trying to say that the build itself was, you know, meta or anything. But this build, I do actually think should be meta. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down in the comments. Right there, 3 out.